This episode of Your Best Manager is brought to you by you. Thank you. To learn more, please visit yourbestmanager.com/support. I'm Jamie Newman, and you're listening to Your Best Manager, the show where I get to chat with and learn from some of the top minds in leadership and people development, and then share it with you. You see, a little over a year ago, I decided to walk away from a really successful career. I used to spend my time helping companies and managers to hire people, and now I get to help companies and managers to lead people. And this podcast, it's the part of the job where I get to practice what I preach and learn from some really incredible people who've gone before me. People like Dr. Marshall Goldsmith, who I'll introduce you to in a moment. By the way, this is episode 103 of the Your Best Manager podcast, which is the third episode of season 2 of the show. If you haven't listened to episode 101 or 102 yet, you may want to skip back and check those out. To recap, last week I was chatting with Meredith Bell on the show, and she shared an extremely powerful quote that, well, here's my response. I want to go talk to someone right now. I don't know. I find that really, really motivating. Right. So if you want to hear the quote that she shared and find out why I was fumbling over my words like a madman, be sure to hop back and listen to episode 102. And the music stopped. So I guess maybe we should get started. Here we go.
You know, like I'm CEO of the year in the United States. I need help and it's okay. I won the Presidential Medal of Freedom. I need help and it's okay. I'm the CEO of Walmart. I need help and it's okay. I'm the president of World Bank. I need help and it's okay. I think that's just so positive for leaders to be able to do that. And that's something that historically hasn't happened. I mean, how many of the top 10 tennis players have a coach?
All of them.
Of course they do. Well, it doesn't mean they're bad tennis players. It means they're smart.
Like the concept sounds good, but like why?
Concept sounds what? That's $60.
Oh no! No, I mean not. Oh no! I did it again.
No. $80.
This is so much fun. That right there, that annoying dinging sound that you heard twice. Yeah, that was a sound that you're going to hear quite frequently during the show today. I wish it wasn't the case. Well, actually, maybe that's not entirely true because that sound is for a really good cause. It's just that, well, that sound is a reminder that I need help. And although that's totally okay, it doesn't change the fact that it's uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable to admit that I need help, especially help with something that I'm supposed to be really good at, talking to people. So here's what happened. During my conversation with Marshall Goldsmith, I said something I didn't realize that I say a lot. And Marshall, well, he was gracious enough to call me on it, a lot. By the way, I'm going to come back to that word, gracious, a little later on today. First, let me formally introduce you to Dr. Marshall Goldsmith.
Life is good. Happy to talk with you.
At the recent Thinkers 50 ceremony in London, Dr. Marshall Goldsmith was recognized again as the world's #1 leadership thinker and #1 executive coach. His newest book, Triggers, is a #1 New York Times and Wall Street Journal bestseller, as well as an Amazon Best Business Book of the Year. His 2 other New York Times bestsellers are Mojo and What Got You Here Won't Get You There, both of which were recognized by Amazon as being in the top 100 books ever written in their field. Oh, and Marshall is the only author to have 2 books on the list. Additionally, Dr. Marshall Goldsmith is one of a select few executive advisors who's worked with over 150 major CEOs and their management teams.
And then for 40 years, I do 4 things. I give talks or teach classes. So I travel all around the world speaking and teaching. I've been to 99 countries, have over 11 million frequent flyer miles just on American Airlines. And I teach at the Dartmouth Tuck School. Then the next thing I do is I write books and articles. So I've done 36 books, 3 best-selling books. And then the next thing is I'm most famous for coaching executives. So I've been the coach of the CEO of Ford and Pfizer and Glaxo and the president of the World Bank and the Mayo Clinic and all kinds of people. And what I like about that is I learn so much. And then finally, I do internet things. So I've got, probably Well, let's say I have about 730,000 followers on LinkedIn. I do blogs, videos, stuff like that all the time. And that's a great way to reach people, just like this, what I'm doing with you. And I'm adopting people. So I got a program called 100 Coaches. So I'm adopting 100 people, teaching them everything I know for free. And when they get old, they have to do the same thing.
So that's Marshall Goldsmith, and it's such an honor to have him join me on the show. Now then, are you ready to jump in and see what all that dinging is about? Okay, so here's what's going to happen. I'm going to play the bulk of the interview for you, which is unedited, of course, except for one minor difference. Every time I use a certain word, you're going to hear a ding. This is important because every time that Marshall catches me using that word, I add $20 to a pot that's to be donated to my favorite charity. And what you'll notice is that there are a few more dings than Marshall points out. You see, after our discussion, Marshall encouraged me to go back through the recording and count how many times I used the word. As you'll see, he was very kind. So listen up for those dings and see if you get to the same number as I did, which I'll share with you at the end of the show. And by the way, before I hit the play button on all this, I want to invite you to check out the show notes for today's episode. If you're listening to this on your phone right now, you'll see a link included in the description. So head over to yourbestmanager.com/episode 103. There you'll find some information on how to connect with Marshall Goldsmith. And something else that you'll see is that I put together a bonus audio clip that I think you're really going to enjoy at my expense. It's a portion of the conversation that happened after the conversation. Once we finished recording the formal interview, Marshall was even more gracious to give me some of the help that I needed. And I wanted to share it with you, even though it's a little uncomfortable. So check out that exclusive bonus audio clip in the show notes at yourbestmanager.com/episode 103. Why don't you kick things off by giving us a brief overview of your career path and just how you got to where you are today?
Well, I got a PhD at UCLA. I was a college professor, and then I met a very famous man named Dr. Paul Hersey, Hersey. Mm-hmm. He invented situational leadership. He got double booked. One day he said, "Can you do what I do?" I said, "I don't know." He said, "Well, I need help. Can you do this?" I said, "I don't know." He said, "I'll pay you $1,000 for one day." That was 40 years ago. I was 28 years old. I was making $15,000 for 1 year. $1,000 a day to a 28-year-old kid 40 years ago was a lot of money.
Yeah.
I said, Paul signed me up. I did a program for the Metropolitan Life Insurance Company. They were very angry when I showed up, but I got ranked first place of all the speakers. And I said, send Marshall again. So Paul called me and said, "Do you want to do this again?" I said, "Paul, sign me up." That's how I got into the leadership development business.
Wow. So almost by accident.
Very much by accident. A lot of life is luck, but also a lot of life is having a great mentor.
Absolutely.
I've been very blessed to have wonderful people who've helped me in my life.
Yeah, well, congratulations on building that successful career. And I mean, you just teed things up perfectly for me because this is the Your Best Manager podcast. And so the big question for today's interview that's going to kick really everything off is, when you look back on your career, who was your best manager? And it doesn't have to be a manager, so it could be a mentor, but who's had the most significant impact or influence on your career and why?
Well, in my case, it would be more of a mentor than a manager because I've never really had many managers. Mm-hmm. My first mentor, Dr. Paul Hersey, made a huge difference in my life. He gave me a chance. He believed in me. And he let me watch him do what he did. Other great mentors I've had, and I've written about this, have included Peter Drucker, world's authority on management. I got ranked #1 leadership thinker in the world last year, and my intellect compared to his is that of a 10-year-old. The guy was so smart and taught me so many things. I feel very lucky to have known him. Other great influence, Dr. Warren Bennis, great leaders like Alan Mulally, who retired as CEO of Ford, as the #1 CEO in America, Frances Hesselbein, CEO of the Girl Scouts, winner of the Presidential Medal of Freedom. I've been very, very blessed to have had so many great mentors, and I've been very lucky. I've got many awards in my life: #1 leadership thinker, #1 coach, #1 bestsellers. Mm-hmm. And Dr. Hersey taught me a great lesson. He said, "It is easy to appear tall if you stand on the shoulders of a giant."
Yeah.
So I've been very lucky to have been able to stand on the shoulders of many giants.
Yeah, I think it's just such a good lesson because I find that there's a temptation for us all to try and be that self-made man or self-made woman. And I mean, you can't do great things alone. And if you've got a passion for something to serve people, I think it is important to seek out people who have been there and who are going down the path that you're going down to learn from them. And yeah, you're right. They're going to put you up on their shoulders, and you're going to be able to accomplish some really cool things, and you have through that. So I think that is incredible. I've got a question about all of these people, though, because something I've been talking about a little bit lately, often on the show, but some of it just through some conversations I've been having, is this idea that the great managers and the great leaders of today, they're not just like, it's not just that they work harder or that they're smarter or that they, read the most books or have the fanciest titles, but they do things like differently from how everyone else operates. And I'm wondering if any of those mentors that you've just mentioned that you've had in your life, if you remember something that maybe one of them did that was just like different, like not quirky different, but something where maybe their approach to how they led or cared for people was just, I don't want to say abnormal because it's a positive, but is there something that was just different about maybe one or all of these leaders?
Two of the greatest leaders I've ever met are Alan Mulally. Alan retired as the CEO of Ford. The company was going bankrupt. The stock went from $1 to $18.40 when he was there. Mm-hmm. He was CEO of the year in the United States, and he had the highest employee rating of any CEO in America when he left Ford. Just an amazing, amazing man. And Francis Hesselbein, who was the CEO of the Girl Scouts, again, Peter Drucker said the greatest leader he's ever met. If I look at what they've done as the leaders, a few things stand out. One is they're incredibly generous people. They have spent hours of their lives helping me, and they didn't have to do that. On the other hand, they're very mission focused. They have a clear mission. What Alan said it very well is a heart of gold and a backbone of titanium. There are people that are at one level very kind and nice people. They're good people with high integrity. Another level are very tough people. They're very focused on their mission, and they're able to make hard decisions as well. So a great leader has to have both. You want someone who's kind, who has a good sense of people, who has good integrity, and is a good human being. You also want somebody who's tough enough to make the hard decisions required to get the job done. And I'd say both of these two are just exemplary in demonstrating both of those qualities. If I had to look at the leaders I coach that improve the most, they have three qualities. One, they have courage. They have to have the courage to look in the mirror and admit they can improve. Mm-hmm. It's hard. They have to have humility. And again, they have to have the humility to admit they're not perfect, because I can't help someone get better if they're already perfect. And then they have to have discipline. They have to have the day-to-day discipline to do the hard work required to improve.
Yeah, that's brilliant. I was just writing down those things. And do you know Richard Ryerson from the Dose of Leadership podcast?
I don't know him.
So he's a guy. I had him on the show. If you've never met him, I should definitely introduce you to him. But he's got this idea of courageous leadership, and everything he teaches starts there with you've got to be willing to be uncomfortable, and it translates directly into that vulnerability and that humility you mentioned. But I think the discipline, I think that is a key, because that's tough, because stepping outside of your comfort zone once, sometimes that takes courage, but like doing it on a regular basis or doing it consistently is sometimes easier said than done. So I'm wondering if you could just talk for a minute then, why are some people able to do these things and other people aren't? Like, is it just a decision, like a mindset thing, or I don't know?
Before we begin, in my book, What Got You Here Won't Get There, so you never say that's great, but. And you said what Richard said is great, but it's tough.
I did it. Oh, thank you. There's $20.
There's $20 for your charity. Yeah.
Why did I bring this up?
Back to you. You just lost another $20. That's 40 now. Now, I'm going to talk about what you just said. It was terrible.
Oh, no.
Isn't this a wonderful charity that you're giving the money to?
Absolutely.
Shouldn't you be happy to give them $20?
I'm so happy.
And then what did you say? Oh, well. Oh, why did I bring it up? I lost $20. Oh, poor me. You did that, didn't you? That was awful.
Yeah. It has nothing to do with the giving the money. It has to do with losing.
Exactly. So you've now lost $40 to the charity.
Yeah, that's okay. That's okay.
Thank you, Marshall.
All right, what were we even talking about there?
I forgot. Ask the question again.
Okay, why are some people able to do this whole courage, humility, discipline thing? And by the way, just to interject for a quick second, if you're wondering who Richard Ryerson is,
there's a leadership void, if you will, or a vacuum or a necessity and it's all based on kind of common sense, and it's leadership is sacrificial. And again, the Marine Corps didn't invent this. These are time-honored principles that just exist right through the dawn of man. Mm-hmm. And it's just been kind of my kind of mantra to kind of get back to that, to get back to the basics of leadership. It's easy to understand, but it's difficult because of the courage, the authenticity, and the vulnerability that's required.
That was Richard Ryerson on episode 33 of the Your Best Manager podcast, talking about common sense leadership. It's one of my favorite episodes, so if you have an extra 30-ish minutes today, go listen to Richard and I talk about courageous leaders and dragon slayers. It's a good time. All right, what were we even talking about there?
I forgot. Ask the question again.
Okay, why are some people able to do this whole courage, humility, discipline thing? And I'll actually relate it back to the other. How are some people able to balance the kindness and the toughness? So why are some people able to do it and others aren't? Is it about mindset, or is it something else?
I think a lot of it is courage. A lot of it's just having the guts to stand up and do what you know is right. And also letting go of ego. It's very hard for us to let go of our own ego. It's very tough. The deepest learning I have in the past year is that we all need help, and it's okay. Mm-hmm. Can admit that. It's hard for some people to admit. I'm very proud of my book, Triggers. 27 major CEOs endorsed the book. Mm-hmm. Now, I'm so proud of that. 30 years ago, no CEO would admit to having an executive coach.
Yeah, good point.
They'd be ashamed. They'd be embarrassed. Well, what I think is very positive about the new world is these 27 people all stand up and say, like, I'm CEO of the year in the United States. I need help, and it's okay. I won the Presidential Medal of Freedom. I need help, and it's okay. I'm the CEO of Walmart. I need help, and it's okay. I'm the president of the World Bank. I need help, and it's okay. I think that's just so positive for leaders to be able to do that. And that's something that historically hasn't happened. I mean, how many of the top 10 tennis players have a coach?
All of them.
Of course they do. Well, it doesn't mean they're bad tennis players. It means they're smart.
Yeah, and ironically, the coaches for these top tennis players aren't currently top tennis players, right?
Of course not.
It's not about finding the best person. It's about finding someone who can, I guess, coach and build up your strengths and who can point out your blind spots, right?
I've never been a CEO in my life, and I've been the coach of 150 CEOs.
Wow, that's incredible. That's incredible. And it's such a good lesson. Because I guess where I'm going with this is, as leaders, regardless of what level we're at, you've just got such an opportunity to be an example to the people who look up to you. I mean, you mentioned president of World Bank, but it's the same thing. You go down to a McDonald's restaurant and you've got a part-time employee who looks up to the general manager who's running the show. And if that person's willing to ask for help, what an impact that'll have on the part-time worker in high school to just learn that, hey, it's okay to ask for help. So I think that's just something fantastic that you brought up there. So thank you for that, Marshall.
I totally agree with you. I think this is true for leaders at all levels, from a first-line leader to a CEO.
Yeah. Now, something else you mentioned is generosity. You had mentioned that the greatest leaders that you're referring to were generous people. And I'm going to tee you up here because that's something that impacted you to expand your own generosity through your 100 Coaches program. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, I went to a program called Design the Life You Love. was put on by my good friend Aisha Bursell. She's one of the top 15 designers in the world. And in the program, she asks, who are your heroes? Then you write down the name of your heroes, and then why are they your heroes? Well, my heroes are people I've already mentioned: Alan Mulally, Francis, Peter Drucker, Paul Hersey. Why are they your heroes? Well, they're all great teachers, and they're incredibly generous people. Mm-hmm. They never charged me anything for all the help they gave me. And then she said, well, why don't you be more like them? So I'm pretty generous. I give away all my material anyway. If you go online to my website, www.marshallgoldsmith.com, it's all there for free. But I thought I could be more generous. Mm-hmm. So I decided I'm going to adopt 15 people, teach them everything I know for free, and the only price is when they get old, they have to do the same thing. I made a little selfie 30-second video and put it on LinkedIn. Turned out to be the most widely viewed video by far in the history of LinkedIn. Then I ended up with 12,000 applicants. Wow. To be adopted. I've picked 45 so far. I've got 55 more to go. And I'm so, excuse me, I've picked 55 so far. I've got 45 to go. And they're just wonderful people. 5 of the top 50 business thinkers in the world. Just some wonderful authors and thinkers and leaders. And, it's just been a great project. And now we're going to adopt 100 more what I call aspiring coaches, people that maybe haven't had so many chances in life, to try to help them out. By the way, if anybody would like to apply for this, just send me an email, marshall@marshallgoldsmith.com. Marshall has 2 L's. And you need 3 things. 1, your bio. 2, why you should be selected. And then 3, how you plan to pay it forward to give back to others in the future.
Perfect. And I'll make sure that your email address and all the info of this is available in the show notes. But I'm curious why this is important to you. Like, the concept sounds good, but like why?
Concept sounds what? That's $60.
Oh no! No, I mean not. Oh no! I did it again.
No, $80.
This is so much fun. See, I knew this was going to happen. I knew it, and I'm smiling right now. You can't see that I'm smiling, but I'm smiling, and obviously you're laughing too. This is a good time. So what was I saying again? Totally thrown off again, and that's okay. Why is this so important? I wonder if you can talk. I'm gonna lead you a little bit here too. I'm sure you're gonna say this anyway, but I'm just thinking about like the ripple effect of what you're doing.
I'm sure you're gonna say this, but
again.
100.
All right. You run the interview from now on.
Your charity loves this.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, they do. This is fantastic. So
now, why is this important to me?
Yes.
Well, for me, I'm getting older. I'm 68. And, we're all going to die anyway. Mm-hmm. And my feeling is, might as well do a little good here. When I'm 95 years old on my deathbed, looking back on life, I don't think I'm going to I don't think I would criticize myself for being too generous and too nice.
Absolutely not.
I never heard any old person say, "Gee, I wish I weren't so generous."
Yeah.
I wish I were more of a jerk.
Yeah, I don't think anybody says that. And I mean, what we're talking about right now is just like beyond that. The ripple effect, I mean, that's got to feel really good. Not that it's selfish, but it's got to feel really good when you can start to see the ripple effect of what you're doing, and when you start to think about what you get to leave behind when your time here is done. I think that's an incredible motivator, but it's inspiring, but it's also just so impactful to other people, right?
It is. It's just wonderful, and it makes me feel good, and it doesn't hurt anyone else. It's all good. And
yeah.
the first group, we've already spent 6 days with the first group.
How was that?
Wonderful.
Yeah.
My friend Alan Mulally, who I mentioned from Ford, spent 2 days with the group. Well, he spent 6 hours with the group, and then Dr. Jim Kim, the president of World Bank, spent 6 hours with them. My friend Francis Hesselbein spent time with them. It's just been wonderful.
Yeah, it's fantastic, and it just speaks to what you're talking about earlier. Like like they are being generous, continuing to be being generous and supporting this project that you're doing. And yeah, they're not making. I mean, you're not making a dime off of this. This is all to give back, and I think that's just incredible. So congratulations on building up that project. I'm so happy to hear the rewards of it, and I'm so happy to hear how successful it's been, and I'm sure you're going to get another 12,000 applicants as time goes on and people start to see some of the fruits of this labor. So congratulations on that. Now, we're going to totally run out of time if I don't keep moving on, and I'm sure we can probably talk about this forever, but I've actually got a surprise question for you from one of the listeners of this show that I want to put you on the spot for. And see how you answer it. So the question came in as like 3 paragraphs. I'm not going to read it all, but I'm going to sum it up to say there's a manager. She's been managing for a couple years, and her employees are not happy with a decision or a couple decisions she's made, and she's found out they're talking about her behind her back. What should she do? Like, she referred to it as gossip, but I don't know that that's the right word. So, like, what do you think?
Well, I teach this in my classes to avoid destructive comments about other people or unnecessary comments. The first thing she needs to do is start with herself. Now, I'm going to give you a couple of lessons that the great Peter Drucker taught me. Mm-hmm. Every decision in life is made by the person who has the power to make the decision. Make peace with that. Not the smartest person or the best person or the right person. It's made by that person. As a leader, if you have the power to make the decision, you make the decision. You don't have to prove you're smart. You don't have to prove you're right. You just make the decision. I'm going to give her one simple model that she can teach from my book, Triggers. Mm-hmm. And she can use this herself and others. Before you make any comment, ask yourself, am I willing at this time to make the investment required to make a positive difference on this topic? Am I willing at this time to make the investment required to make a positive difference on this topic? If the answer is yes, go for it. If the answer is no, let it go. Well, our mission in life is to make a positive difference, not to prove we're smart, not to prove we're right. 65% of all interpersonal communication is spent on A, people talking about how smart, special, or wonderful they are, or listening to somebody do that, plus B, people talking about how dumb other people are, listening to people do that. Well, before you speak, is this comment going to help the customer? Is it going to help the person I'm talking to? Is it going to help the person I'm talking about? Is it going to help our company? If the answer is no, 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 and no, don't say it. So really encourage people to focus on what they can change, not what they can't change. And in discussing this with her team, I wouldn't personalize it to her. Mm-hmm. I would talk about it as just a general concept that's good for everybody. And what she should say is, this is something I'm going to try to practice, and I can do a better job in my own life. So lead by example.
I love that, especially because if you are the recipient of hearing one of your leaders say, hey, here's what I'm working on, here's what I think would be great for the whole team, but here's what I'm going to be practicing. It just creates that, inclusive environment. Hey, we're in this together. We're going to go to a better place together. I'm not perfect, but I also recognize that my example could help you. So I think that's some great advice. And it's so good because one of the things when I was talking to her, I was saying, well, I don't necessarily look at it as gossip. And really, I could care less for the word gossip. If you're not building people up in your speech, you've got to question whether or not you should be saying it, whether it's behind their back or to their face. I mean, every conversation, as you were saying, should be intended to make a positive difference, not prove yourself right or make you feel good, right? So,
exactly.
Fantastic. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for helping, and hopefully that's helpful for the listener. 20 dings. And that doesn't even include the post-interview conversation I had with Marshall, where if you listen to the bonus audio clip, you'll hear an additional 9 dings. So that's 20 in the main conversation and 29 total over a span of like 30 minutes. Now, I already knew that I use a few filler words and transition words, the ums and the ahs, a little stuttering from time to time, and as a speaker and as a podcaster, it's something I'm working on. What I didn't realize was how that word but can impact others and devalue what was said previously. Of course, for those who like to argue, like me, it's not so much about the word but. There are times when devaluing a previous part of a sentence is intentional and effective in writing and speaking. And there are also times, like when you're debating an important issue, where you may intentionally devalue what someone else said in order to prove your point. I wonder though, could I be just as an effective communicator if that word but didn't actually even exist? Even in debate, I probably could. So I'm grateful that Marshall helped me out with it. And again, to hear the post-interview conversation I had with him, just head over to yourbestmanager.com/episode 103, and the clip is right there for you to check out. Now, before I close out the show, I want to circle back to a word I used at the top of the episode. I called Marshall gracious. So let me start by giving you the best definition of grace you will probably ever hear. Grace is when someone gives you something you do not deserve. It's a gift. Marshall Goldsmith was gracious to me by calling me out on my bad habit. He gave me the gift of awareness, which is now self-awareness, because since this conversation, I've been so much more intentional about how I write and how I speak. Although I'm not perfect by any means, Marshall gave me the gift of knowledge, the knowledge I need to become a more effective communicator. Here's the connection. I didn't pay for Marshall's advice. He's a top executive coach, and I probably couldn't afford him. He also didn't owe me anything. By coming on the show, Marshall was actually doing me a favor, not the other way around. And I don't have the same level of accolades and accomplishments that Marshall Goldsmith has, so I don't merit the gift he gave me. That's why I say that Marshall Goldsmith was gracious. So, there are 2 lessons that I want you to take away from today's episode. First of all, we all need help, and it's okay. I felt extremely uncomfortable during my chat with Marshall. I was constantly wondering when I'd screw up next. Also, when I was going back through the recording and listening to all my screw-ups and listening to how I responded, I felt embarrassed listening to myself because I was so aware of my opportunities for improvement. It's okay. I don't think you're judging me for exposing my weaknesses. And if you are, I think that's maybe more your problem than it is mine. I need help, and it's okay. It's okay because I want to get better each and every day, just like some of the great CEOs and athletes of the world that Marshall talked about in the show today. Second lesson to take away is that as a leader, you too are to be gracious. Just like Marshall said, I don't think you'll be on your deathbed looking back at your life and wishing you were less kind. And whether you feel like your employees deserve it or not, it's your opportunity, or better put, it's your responsibility as a leader to take your people to a better place. And you do that by helping your people improve and develop. So be kind, be gracious, and remember that telling people what they need to hear in order to get better, even if those things are uncomfortable, it's an act of grace. Thanks for listening, and I'll connect with you shortly over at yourbestmanager.com. Have a great day.